This is Mary Alice Hudson. The Berquist and Pollock chapter about the collegial culture, combined with the information about the new progressives in the American Academic Profession chapter by Brent, made me feel very conflicted. I am first and foremost a teacher, and as a teacher I am a proponent of active learning. I believe it promotes student engagement, as Brent says, as well as learning, which Brent definitely questions. I know that if my students aren't engaged, they won't learn. I realize my students are young. I teach K-5, but even with older students, learning doesn't just happen. Engagement matters and happens either because students are interested or because they have an intrinsic reason to learn the material. Anyway, as a teacher, I strive to teach using research-based practices and pedagogy in my classroom. I value the generation and dissemination of knowledge, and I value research. I'm also tremendously practical, which makes it hard for me to appreciate research merely for research's sake. Even in my own dissertation, I opted for action research because it seemed wrong to investigate something esoteric when I could see real problems in real classrooms all around me. All of this creates a feeling of conflict for me when I try to think about what I believe should be happening in higher education. The idea of the early American university model based on the British model did not sit well with me. The idea of students, no doubt white male students, who already had the social status that enabled them to get jobs and were just attending school for personal development and development of the spirit of learning, rubbed me the wrong way. In my mind, it's not surprising that this elitist system quickly lost ground to a system that favored scientific research, technology, and career preparation. The German model seemed more closely aligned to my experiences, particularly my first experiences in higher ed, which were faculty-focused rather than student-focused, with undergrads viewed as a nuisance. From the German model came academic freedom, the idea that research is king, and the idea that to succeed in higher ed required the professor to be free from the responsibilities of daily life, either by having a spouse who took care of the family, or in the case of many women, not having a family at all. Maybe I'm naive, and maybe there are many jobs that require this type of sacrifice, but this work-life balance seems crazy and untenable. And honestly, the whole system seems untenable. Chapter 1 of Hermanowitz described universities wanting to maximize faculty and student learning and the sharing of learning, as well as have the best faculty and the best students, because prestige generates money. However, according to Brent, superior faculty equals inferior undergraduate teaching. To truly maximize learning requires research and teaching, but the two are difficult to balance, with institutions typically tipping in favor of one or the other, often toward research, leaving the teaching to full and part-time non-tenure track instructors who may or may not be effective teachers. Geiger says non-tenure track appointments do considerable damage to both principles of academic freedom and tenure, and to the quality of our academic institutions, not to mention the adverse consequences for the individuals seeking to serving in such appointments, such as universities typically don't invest in their growth, which can contribute to their loss of skills over time and their ability to stay current or seek tenure-track positions. According to Brent, currently more credit hours are taught by non-tenure track instructors, decreasing the quality of undergraduate learning and increasing the size of the problem. In Focus on the Classroom, Brent discusses the move to improve teaching and the move to improve student outcomes. The move to improve teaching in the form of new progressivism has led to changes which have resulted in increasing student engagement, but according to the author, not student learning. He says learning has become enjoyable, but no longer has high or demanding standards. In K-12 education, there's a great deal of research that indicates student engagement is critical to learning, and as I said earlier, I view it as foundational to student learning. I think this harks back to the idea of teaching the students you have. Society and people have changed. Education must change as well. Anyway, according to Brent, higher ed has changed for the worse due to an ethic of consumerism. Students are the consumers, and the consumer demands fewer hours of studying, more engagement and entertainment, more faculty kindness and respect, more group work, field experiences, and interactive learning environments. And due to the rise in student evaluation of faculty have complied. Brent says this has resulted in lower expectations and easier grading to get good evaluations from students. Brent discusses the outcome assessment movement, which seems to have had much less real impact on higher ed, but has resulted in changes in course outputs, which now include portfolios and capstone projects to assess and demonstrate learning outcomes. According to Brent, as the consequence of these two movements, higher education has changed, but not for the better. According to the author, improvement requires higher expectations and more challenging course requirements, which will lower faculty evaluations by students, which creates a vicious cycle. Anyway, back to my conflict. I know society and student expectations have changed, and I know it's not necessarily all changed for the better. I don't believe watering down higher education is the answer, but I also don't agree with the author that all of the changes mentioned make higher education worse. The world is more collaborative, and active learning and collaborative learning can be rigorous. It should not be assumed they are lesser just because they are different from the sit-and-get lectures of the past. He mentions the transformation of teaching from a scholarly profession to a helping profession. I'm not sure why teaching can't be both. In my most recent experiences, it is both, and I believe it should be. Here are my references, and thank you for listening.